Dear students, now let us discuss the chapter Deep Water by William Douglas. This lesson recounts to us the sense of panic that gripped the author William Douglas when he was nearly drowned in a swimming pool, and the steps taken by him to overcome his fear. Now, when people are fearful of things, they tend to avoid the feared objects, situations or events. In the short term, this avoidance might help reduce the feeling of fear, but in the long term, it can make the fear even worse. Challenges lead us to growth and joy, so it's not a good idea to avoid them. So the real choice in front of us is to face it and overcome it. Then only the fear will lose its ability to rule us or dictate our decisions. But the question is how we should overcome it. The experts say that we have to re-experience the fear in order to put an end to it. The repeated exposure to the events or situations that created the trauma can help the anxiety subside. To overcome any fear, the best way is to treat yourself with what is called an exposure therapy. Let us take one or two situations. A student who has stage fright or fear of public speaking can read about great orators. Then he can watch some students perform in assembly or some functions in our school. Then he can stand in front of a mirror and speak as if he was addressing an audience. Then he can call a group of his close friends and make a presentation. That would boost his morale, and he would be in a position to present a speech or a program in an assembly or in some other house programs. The repeated practice would help him or would give him the confidence to present in an inter-house or inter-school competitions. Similarly, a person who is afraid of flying can read about the stories of plane crash. Then he can visit an airport but come back without boarding it. Next time he can board a plane but leave it before takeoff. Then he can think about making a short trip. So slowly and steadily, in a controlled environment, he is able to overcome his fear of flying. It is this kind of therapy that William Douglas tried on himself when he realized that his fear of water was depriving him of many pleasures of outdoor life. So, who was William Douglas? William Douglas was born on October 16, 1898 at Maine, Minnesota, and died on January 19, 1980 at Bethesda, Maryland, US. William Douglas was very determined and competitive. He set the record for the longest continuous service on the Supreme Court. He was known for his strict commitment to civil liberties and authored many opinions that expressed his views on individual rights such as freedom of speech. William Douglas wrote many books. Most of them are about law, political philosophy or nature. He did write some autobiographical books also, including Go East, Young Man, The Early Years and Court Years. The chapter Deep Water is taken from his book of Men and Mountains. At the age of 2, William Douglas suffered polio but escaped permanent paralysis. But with a strict diet, exercise and outdoor activities, he strengthened his bones and fully recovered from his illness. Let us find out how he developed his fear of water. Did the sense of fear take a hold on him with just one incident? No, there were also other situations or incidents. The seed of fear was planted by an incident at California Beach. His father was with him. They were enjoying a holiday. His father was holding him in his hands, yet he was knocked down by waves. Nothing happened to him, but he was frightened and terrified by the overpowering force of the waves. So that was the beginning of his fear. Now let us see how the fear gets nurtured. His mother unwittingly helped the fear to take roots in his mind. Okay, the intention of the mother was good. The Yakima river was treacherous. It could easily drown a child. She wanted to caution the child about the danger of going to the river. She kept telling him the details of each drowning incident. But these details were actually maneuvers that helped the fear to grow in his mind. Douglas loved outdoor games. He needed these activities to strengthen his bones and muscles. But what are outdoor games without the water sports? The first step is he wanted to learn to swim. The Yakima River was deep and dangerous, so he looked for a safer place. But the sight of the swimming pool revived unpleasant memories. The incident at California Beach, the deaths in the Yakima River, all came back to his mind. But he fought and subdued them. He tried to learn by paddling with the new water wings, watched the other boys and practiced swimming. But then this incident took place. He was all alone in the pool and waiting for others to come. Then a big boy came there, lifted him and threw him to the deep end of the water. Now the hapless boy started going down the water. Though he was frightened, he was not frightened out of his wits. He could think and plan things. When he reaches the bottom of the water, he would make a big leap upwards. But he failed. He went down the water 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he lost his consciousness. What makes the story really exciting is the first-person narration of the drowning experience. As we go through the description, we too experience the terror of drowning. Although he was panicky, he had his strategy in place to come to the surface. But he failed. Terror seized him. He was suffocating and tried to yell. His lungs ached. His head throbbed. He was dizzy and trembled with fright. During the 3rd attempt to come to the surface, he lost all his strength and fell unconscious. William Douglas spends a major part of his lesson to the struggle he had in the water. The various emotions that he undergoes are well explained. When he fell into the water, he was of course frightened, but not frightened out of his wits. He made his plan to make a big jump and come to the surface. But things did not work out as he planned. It was a long journey down And finally, when he made an attempt, he couldn't reach the top in time. He was suffocating. His lungs were ready to burst. When he opened his eyes, he saw only water with a yellow tinge. Then he grew panicky. His limbs were like dead weights. When he started going down for the second time, he made the same plan. He remembered the strategy. But sheer stark terror seized him. It had even a deeper hold on him. Though he made a big spring upwards, it made no difference. He shook and trembled with fright. He tried to call for help. He tried to call for his mother, but nothing happened. Now he started going the third time. He sucked for air. He did not get anything but water. Then all effort ceased. He relaxed. A blackness swept over his brain. He lost his consciousness. The impact of the drowning experience was very huge on William Douglas. A haunting fear was in his heart. Even the slightest exertion upset him. For some days he was wobbly in his knees and sick in his stomach. He feared water. He avoided water. Icy horror would grab his heart whenever he approached water bodies. It ruined his fishing trips. It deprived him of the joy of water sports. But William Douglas, who loved outdoor games, who wanted to enjoy the fun of water sports, it was not acceptable. He wanted to fight the fear of water. He decided to try every way possible to overcome his fear of water. So he decided to employ an instructor to teach him swimming. Under the guidance of the instructor, he practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. First, with the help of a pulley, belt and rope, he taught him how to swim back and forth across the pool. Panic seized him every time his head went underwater. But bit by bit, he was able to show his dominance over fear. Then the instructor trained him in the individual steps of swimming, in crawl stroke, in breaststroke, side stroke, backstroke, and so on. After 6 months of training, he was not only a successful swimmer, but was also free of his fear to a great extent. But he wanted to make sure that he had overcome his fear. He swam across the entire length of the swimming pool when he was alone in the pool. Tiny vestiges of fear would raise their heads, but a simple rebuke was sufficient to make it disappear. Next, he went to Lake Wentworth, dived off a dock at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. Then he had residual doubts. He swam across the warm lake and back. Then he made sure that he had conquered his fear of water. Now we reach the final part. What does this experience mean to Douglas? What does it mean to us? The fear of water or similar fear we have is all a handicap that we should overcome. It shows not only our triumph over our weakness, but also our determination, willpower, and personality. Death brings peace, a peaceful end. There is terror and anxiety when one feels death. Fear is an enemy who should be defeated with the persistent effort and determination. Roosevelt has appropriately said, all we have to fear is fear itself. It has a very large meaning for us. What we must be afraid of is fear only. Those who have undergone the experience of fear, will only understand the true value of this experience. Since the author has experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror the fear of it can produce, the will to live grew in him. At the end of it all, he was free to walk the mountain paths, climb the peaks, and brush aside fear. Later on in his life, when he faced several challenges and difficulties, the lessons he learned while fighting the fear of water helped him overcome all these challenges and difficulties. Let us also take a leaf out of the book of his experience and fight the fear that obstructs us, taking Douglas as a model. Dear students, the way William Douglas fought his fear and overcame it is a great inspiration to all of us. Let us emulate his example and fight our fears if we any and overcome them. Now let us look at some great personalities who successfully fought their fears and whose method of fighting fear will definitely help us in our life. The first personality we are going to discuss is the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. The Gandhian method, empowerment was achieved through inculcating fearlessness in the people. The essence of his teaching was fearlessness, not merely bodily courage, but the absence of fear from the mind. But the dominant impulse in India under British rule was that of fear, pervasive, oppressing, strangling fear. Fear of the army, fear of the police, fear of the widespread secret service, fear of the official class, fear of laws meant to suppress, fear of prison, fear of the landlord's agents, fear of the money lender, fear of the employment and starvation. It was against this all-pervading fear that Gandhi's quiet and determined voice was raised. Gandhi used to say, "Be not afraid." He himself pointed out how non-violent struggle was the choice of the brave, not of the weak. The next personality I would like to mention is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was born and brought up in an environment of poverty and oppression. As a young man, he witnessed the white South African government imposing more and more restrictions on an already downtrodden, uneducated black majority. He became even more aware of the atrocities and injustice committed in the name of apartheid. He said, "Our march to freedom is irreversible. We must not allow fear to stand in our way." Dangers and difficulties have not deterred him. They will not frighten the people now. He called upon the people to be prepared for them like men in business who do not waste energy in vain talk and idle action. Mandela personifies the way in which the human spirit can triumph over hate and evil by embracing peace and reconciliation in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Courage has many forms, and Mandela demonstrated physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional courage throughout his hard life. The next person that comes to our mind is Abraham Lincoln. He was called the fearless president. The position he took on the slavery issue and standing firm in the face of the rebellion, Abraham Lincoln was without doubt a fearless president of America. One more person I would like to mention in this context, Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King taught us that fear could be a tremendous barrier to political, economic, and social freedom. Fear was used in his time to intimidate the entire community of African Americans. It's not just a political field that we come across people who successfully fought their fears. Look at other fields such as music, arts, sports. There are plenty of people who reach the top positions in their respective fields, but in the process they had to encounter obstacles, difficulties, challenges. They successfully encountered them and won over them. Let us learn from their examples, read about them, and be inspired. Thank you.